Okay, so what I'm going to do is teach you a spell, as it were. Now, a lot of people who are in witchcraft or the occult think that witchcraft and the occult is only for those practicing witchcraft or practicing the occult. And you got to forgive my bedhead. I just got up, by the way. So here's the thing. This is not true. So there's a huge, uh, actually pretty vast amount of witchery that is actually dedicated to normal people. That means people who do not practice witchcraft and have no intention to ever practice witchcraft. They are made for the benefit of society. Okay, now the Wokani and the Knights Hospitalis and the Knights Templar and the Synoptic Knights actually have this witchcraft that's based to help regular people. So, that said, I'm going to teach normal people, you people watching, the first level of the S.O.B spell. Now you might be thinking, why is it called S.O.B? Is it a son of a bitch? Well, S.O.B, you put it together, means sob, means cry, which kind of has some relation to what I'm going to talk about. So basically, S.O.B means suspension of belief. And it means exactly that, suspension of belief. So it doesn't really erase something you believe in, but what it does is it stops or mutes the effect of an incident or occurrence. Okay, so it sounds kind of complicated, and in a way it is, but in a way it's not. So it depends on whether or not you, as a person who's, I'm trying to teach this spell to, and you got to remember, I'm doing this for normal people. This is a first level spell. Normal people never get to a second, third level unless you're actually in witchcraft. So what I'm doing is teaching you a very safe spell, and I wouldn't do anything if it wasn't. I wouldn't teach you anything if it wasn't safe. So here it goes. So how could you use this S.O.B spell, this suspension of belief spell? Well, this is about people and redemption. So people are people, man. In other words, we're not perfect, and once in the time of our lives, once in a while, we can get ourselves into trouble. Okay. I've known a lot of real life circumstances where this happens. So in other words, where you may have done something, or were impaired or drunk, or under an influence of an ideology and so forth, and at that point in your life, you've done something that people really ostracized you for, they really judged you for. And so sometimes people have to move from the neighborhood, or leave to another city or whatever, just to get away from that stigma of people judging you and punishing you for something you done one time and it ruined your life. Okay, so why am I bringing this up? Because this happens to all of us at some point in time. So where does this spell have benefit? Well, it's kind of weird that you mentioned this, because I don't think that a person who messed up once in life, whatever, it's not somebody who's, being a serial screw up and, messing up in life continuously. Sometimes people do things, and they, unfortunately, the community around them punishes them so much so that they either have to leave, or if they can't leave, they're just continually punished. Okay, so let me bring you a few examples of this. So in normal life, maybe a person was a gangbanger, whatever, and later on, they're getting their act together, and they got their GED, and they're starting a job where they need to have more respect, and people go, well, aren't you that one guy that was out there shooting, so forth and whatever. Communities can be, very harsh on people, as far as judging them on their past. So that's one thing. Or maybe you were a girl who got drunk, and you they took advantage of you or something, and they ostracized you because you think you were sexually immoral, or whatever, and they're just judging you forever for it. Or maybe you were ignorant about something. You said something to offend people, and you didn't really mean that, and but for years and years and years, they're just punishing you for it. So let me give you a few examples. This happens in life to all of us, and you don't want to have to, like, uproot your whole life and go move somewhere to escape it. So what you want to do is try to get that muted with indifference, and you want to use this thing called the suspension of belief. So let me give you an example of things you probably already know about. So a lot of us pay a lot of attention to the lives of stars, superstars, movie stars, music stars, stuff like this. Okay, so let me give you an example of people who used S.O.B, the suspension of belief, who were able to get over, you know, their past, and people who didn't use S.O.B, the tactics of it. There's 3 tactics, and I'm going to explain what they are in a second. So let's bring up Pamela Anderson and Mel Gibson, Roseanne Barr. Okay, let's bring this up. So Pamela Anderson, you know, she goes around. She's still widely respected as a, you know, beautiful woman, you know, and she's not perfect or whatever. But really what happens is she's able to walk around in society and live a life fundamentally being admired still. Okay, so she made a sex video that was real public where she was actually performing fellatio on a boat with you know, Tommy the drummer, her ex-husband, and all that. Now usually if you do these kind of things, like Paris Hilton and all this stuff, when you do these sex videos and stuff, you know, you know, it can go wrong. I mean, you know, they can actually, you know, judge you for this for the rest of your life. And in other words, if you wanted to do a sponsorship for, let's say that Pepsi, you know, they want to give you $gazillion to sponsor them, after they see you doing something like performing fellatio on a boat, they're not going to actually hire you. Okay, but strangely, they do, you know, after a certain amount of time. Now, why? It's important that you understand this and how this can actually affect your life. So, you got to understand that there's 3 different tactics that are used to get back into the mainstream and have people forgive you, as they say, but they're not really forgiving you, and they're not forgetting either. But what you're doing is you're muting the effect. Okay, you're making them indifferent. In other words, they don't care that you did those things. They're just going to focus on the good things you've done and not the bad things you've done. And boy, what I just said right there is what you need in life. Because if you could focus this and you could harness this power, that means it's going to make your life really easy. It's going to make your life much, much easier as you go through it. So let's talk about Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson said a bunch of anti-Semitic stuff and anti-racial stuff. I was anti-black racial stuff and all this. Some of these stuff would seem to be unforgivable, and so some people still remember those things. But actually, he's actually back in, you know, in the film genre and still loved by people. I actually like Mel Gibson a lot. I like Roseanne a lot. You know, Pamela Anderson's cool too. And, you know, I understand that they're just people. You understand they're not perfect. And this is really the premise that you want to get across to the general public. In your life, when small things like this happen to you personally. Now, with Mel Gibson, you know, it was a little bit more, you know, a little more ostracizing, but he was actually was able to get back on the block, as they say. So let's talk about Roseanne Barr. She's not back, okay? And the reason why Roseanne Barr is still ostracized and so heavily punished is because she's not adhering to 3 rules. 3 rules which I'm going to teach you right now of how to get rid of your ostracizing past. So let's talk about it. So Roseanne Barr did a tweet, and if you look at the tweet, it's not really all that bad, but it happened at a time where there was a lot of Black Lives Matters and so forth, and all that, where in other words, society was particularly sensitive to these particular subjects, and she was just coming out with a new show, and her punishment for this was so entirely bad that they canceled the entire show that was named after her. The show was actually named after her, and they canceled her. Literally, they canceled her, and they really canceled her show, both metaphorically, you know, being canceled by society, but also canceled physically for the show, and it caused a lot of damage not only to her but the people who were actually hired for the show. Okay. Now later on, they made the show without her. That's how far and bad she's still being ostracized to this day. So what's the difference between Pamela Anderson and Mel Gibson and Roseanne Barr? Well, you see, Roseanne Barr did a tweet, and she was punished extremely harshly for it. And if you compare that to the immoral behavior of Pamela Anderson or the anti-Semitic rants from Mel Gibson, this small tweet was minuscule. Yet she was punished the harshest. Why? Well, because she didn't practice those 3 fundamental things and getting people to be indifferent. And this is how you do this. It's through S.O.B, suspension of belief. So let's go through the 3 tactics of this. So one of the things is doubt. Okay, so why am I bringing up doubt? Doubt is doubt. Doubt is mean, well, maybe it's a what if. It's kind of a what if thing. So doubt is what you want to get into the public's head about whatever circumstances you're in. It's not, doubt is not going to make them believe you didn't do those things, but it's going to make them believe that you had maybe, here it goes, maybe some reason, or that you fell into that circumstance. Okay? So in other words, people say, well, she was drunk, or maybe she was. And so what they do is they provide doubt. And once you have that doubt never goes away. Let me tell you how actually powerful doubt is. Sometimes people are sentenced to death. They're sentenced to death, literally, in court. And what lawyers look for is something called the benefit of a doubt. It's literally called the benefit of a doubt. The reason why it's called the benefit of doubt, because it's promoting doubt that is beneficial. So that small benefit of a doubt, if you could get the jury just to not to believe everything that you say, but just doubt it a little bit, that can be enough to actually save your life in that case. But what I'm saying is just bringing the value of doubt into the focus. So what you want to do in your life is, if you get in a circumstance where people are really judging you, what you want to do is give a reason for them to say, well, there may be a reason she got into that situation to begin with, and this is how you instill doubt. So that's number one, doubt. The second one is breaching. What is breaching? Breaching actually means showing your face. In other words, showing your face in society, and going about life as you would as if the incident did not occur. So in other words, you may have done something that the whole community is blaming you for, but most people would go and hide in their house for so long, whatever. Don't do that. What you want to do is even if you're going to get ridiculed somewhat, just keep doing what you're doing in the community. Go to the store, go whatever, go to your school, go whatever. Don't do the thing where you hide, because what happens is that you need to breach. That's why it's called breaching. You need to breach those expectations. They're going to expect you to hide. Don't do that. You messed up. You're only human. It's not going to affect your life. Just keep on doing what you're going to do, and you're going to breach the expectation of you hiding and so forth. So that's the second one, breaching. And now the third one is called normalization. Okay, so breaching is connected to normalization, because once people see you and they get used to you, it starts to get normalized. Okay, so in other words, there's a lot of things in life that would be ordinarily shunned or actually cause shock, and people will be appalled. But the more you expose people to it, the more normalized people get to it. This is the why, like, if you ever see like movements, the trans movement or non-binary movement, there's all these things that would ordinarily appall society, but because they keep doing it over and over and over, they're exposing you to it so much that it starts to normalize it. So even things that are bad or shocking can be normalized, because simply the exposure that is being out there is so much that it becomes normalized. Okay, so then you have these three aesthetics. What you got is normalizing things, and of course breaching, and of course providing doubt. So how does this work when you put them together? Well, let's look at Mel Gibson, Roseanne Barr, and Pamela Anderson. Remember Pamela Anderson, doing fellatio on a boat, and for everybody to see, and then you got Mel Gibson going crazy, saying these racist rants, and then you got Roseanne Barr, who just put out a tweet. Now, obviously, we all know that Roseanne Barr was punished the worst. Okay, but why is there such a difference between Pamela Anderson and Mel Gibson being accepted back into society, and people understanding they're just people, and why this kind of forgiveness and reconciliation did not happen with Roseanne Barr? Well, let's talk about the three things we just discussed. Doubt, number one, breaching, and of course normalization. So Roseanne Barr did none of these things. So unlike Mel Gibson and Pamela Anderson, who just went about life normally, again, providing a doubt, a reason, giving people a doubt, saying, hey, I have a benefit of doubt. I was drunk when I said these things. Oh, well, I was in love when I was doing these things. So there's a benefit of doubt that people understand. And this is the reason why they say, okay, I'm going to give them some leeway on this. And then there's breaching. They're not hiding. They're not hiding or hiding in their basement and trying to get away from society. They're actually going through society and living lives as they would as if the incident didn't happen. And then, of course, there's three, which is called normalization. So when they're exposed, they're exposing themselves to people as ordinary people would do. What happens? They become normalized, and then what happens? You become normalized. Now, Gibson and Anderson did these things, and they actually reaped the benefit of those three aspects. Now, Roseanne Barr did not. Roseanne Barr actually didn't provide a reason to create doubts. She never created a reason to it. She never said she was under influence, or never said she was influenced by an ideology, nothing. She made no excuse for what she did. Number two is that she did not breach. In other words, people expected her to hide, and that's exactly what Roseanne did. She stopped doing anything in show business, any kind of interviews, and she's just hid. And she wouldn't do interviews so much later. And another thing is she didn't get the situation normalized. So she didn't have the exposure. She never exposed it enough for that people could get used to her being exposed on TV again and normalize it. And because of this, she suffered greatly. And she's still suffering. I don't think she deserves that amount of punishment, by society, but nonetheless she did. So if you have some common sense, you can see exactly how this plays out in real life, because this is about real life. So what does this have to do with the witchcraft spell of suspension of belief? It has a lot to do with it. I just told you 3 ways to instill that spell. And I know you're not a witch, I know you're not a warlock or whatever, but you don't need to be. All you got to do is be a normal person and understand how those 3 tactics actually work. Providing doubt, instilling doubt in a person's head, and giving them a reason to say, well, I had a reason for the reasons I did. I had a reasons for the things I did, is what I mean to say. And also, breaching. Hey, you got to live your life, man. You're not going to go pick up and have people punish you for something you did, so that you have to go to another neighborhood. You're going to have to be exposing yourself, which leads to normalization. Then when they see you and they go, oh, well, this guy did this, so he did this stuff a long time ago, whatever, it gets normalized, and they accept the good things you're doing now in life presently, instead of focusing on the one bad incident that you were prosecuted for a long time ago. So this is actually something that you could use in life, and this is a psychological spell. And I just explained to you how it's done. I explained to you the 3 tactics, how it's done. And if you use this in your life, you can use it in various circumstances to make sure that your life can be a little bit more easy, instead of being judged by other people, and instead of being set aside by society, being saying, well, you can't get this job because you did this in the past, or you're not respected enough to be in this group where we're hiring you for this group, and also all these things that actually make an impact on your life financially and emotionally. And you can actually get over these things if you know those 3 tactics and how to use that S.O.B. spell.